Hey guys, all right, we are ready to move to final paper. So you do need your pencil still, you need your sketchbook for reference, and you need your tag board. That's the thickest white paper in your kit, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and push my sketchbook off to the side so that we can still reference it if needed, and I'm putting it in view so that I can use it as my reference as I go to draw. So I do have my magic rub available. What you do need to remember as we're working on final paper is draw light, okay? We are gonna be using oil pastels and we're gonna be using some lighter colors, and we definitely don't wanna see the pencil through it. We want it eventually just to be an oil pastel project. So we're gonna draw nice and light so that I'm gonna do it as dark as we need to see it on the paper, but you're gonna draw it just light enough so that you can see it. Hold that pencil loose. Remember not to hold it down here by the tip, but to scoot your pencil back a little bit and to keep your pressure off of the wood of your pencil as much as possible. So what's required for the project? 5 donuts, but they can be partial donuts. So you're probably gonna have at least 2 that are full-size donuts and that show completely, but then maybe you're gonna have some donuts that partially show, go off the edge of the paper, or are stacked on top of each other, whatever it may be. So 5 donuts is your minimum. Okay, well, we're even gonna write that down. So let's say 5 donuts. And you can spell donuts like Dunkin' Donuts or regular donuts. Okay. 2 need to be whole donuts. The rest can be partial. Okay. And then I want at least 3 donuts to have decoration. Okay. And then I want you to break the edge of your paper. Okay, and these will be in your instructions as well, but it's just to remind you that you do have some requirements as you lay out your design. Okay, I do not want you to copy mine directly. I want you to come up with your own design and choose where you want to put your donuts based on the donuts that you enjoy drawing the most, okay? Because maybe you really love the jelly-filled donuts and you want them to spill out all over the paper. Or maybe you love sprinkles and you want to have sprinkles everywhere. That's up to you. All right, so 5 donuts, 2 need to be full-size. So I would suggest start with those full-size ones to make sure you get those on the paper. I am going to put one in the middle-ish, but I'm going to kind of push it off to the side just a little bit. And then I'm going to kind of think about how I want to lay this out. All of our donuts are going to be on the same table or plane. So we're going to follow the same potato-like method we did before. So I'm going to start by finding my center of my paper, and I'm going to shift my first donut to the right a little bit. But again, you're choosing where you want to put your donut. You do not need to work with me right now. You can just watch, and then you can kind of go back and review this later on to remember some of the techniques, or just to kind of get ideas for your composition of your paper. So just a reminder that composition means how your artwork is laid out. Okay? So I'm not even going to decide if I'm going to have a hole in this donut yet. I'm just going to get my potato on there. Okay, so then I'm going to go and put my next potato on, and I think I'm going to do it kind of diagonal, as if they were like laid out in a line. So going ahead and drawing that curve in, and then that upper curve. And this is my final paper, and I'm still sketchy. Drawing curves is challenging. Getting them to look correct is challenging. I got kind of messy down here, so I'm going to go back and clean that up a little bit. As long as you're keeping it light, your magic rub will be able to erase and help you out to make sure you still have clean edges that nobody will see later. And your oil pastels will cover a lot of this up. But again, though, if you draw super dark and you're making indentations in your paper, you will notice it when you put oil pastels on there. Your pencil is a sharp tool, so you can make actual indentations in your paper. And when you go to rub over them with oil pastel later, if you have rubbed too hard with your pencil, it will be very difficult to get the oil pastel inside those cracks. So that's another reason why you want to keep it nice and loose, nice and light. All right, so I've got my 2 whole donuts on the page. Again, I'm not adding any details yet. I am just laying out my composition. So then I need to decide, all right, well, what do I want to do next? I really want kind of a donut to be leaned up against another donut. So I think what I'm going to do is, even though I am more of a right-handed dominant, which means I want to put it over here, I'm going to make one over here. So I'm going to tilt this donut as if it was kind of like resting on its side. This is just an option. I didn't really show this completely in the first tutorial, so it's up to you. And I've already completed my last requirement of just breaking the plane of the paper, so going all the way to my edge, and then I can go ahead and erase. Donuts aren't transparent or translucent, so that would be weird. Can you imagine a see-through donut? What would it have to be made of to be edible and see-through? I don't really want to know, actually. Okay, so I've got 3 donuts, so I really only need 2 more, but we'll see if I've filled my paper enough. I'm sort of feeling like I'm gonna need something down here, and I definitely need something up here. So I'm gonna go ahead and draw in another donut, and I'm gonna have this one kind of go off the edge of the page. So drawing in my curved potato-like shape down here, cleaning up any loose lines, and again, I've broken the edge of my paper. And then I think what I'm going to do up here, since I have a decent amount of space, is I'm going to start with a donut. It probably is going to break the edge of the paper, but I'm going to do that stack. I'm going to try to get like maybe 3 donuts stacked. So I'm going to go ahead and draw my first donut. And then how I would do this for stacking wise, and I do need to draw the full donut to understand where the next one stacks before I can erase. So I'm going to make sure I think about like where the top edge of that donut would be before the next one sits, before I draw that next kind of parallel curve. Okay, and I want them to be the same kind of donut, so I would want this first shape that I drew to be pretty much the same as that second layer here. And then the same thing for the third. But before I draw that third one, so I don't get confused, I'm going to erase out that initial first one. Okay, so then I can go in one more time. And now I'm going to erase that out. So now it should look like, it reminds me of that child's toy where they stack and get smaller, except for this time they don't get smaller, right? They're just rings stacked on each other. Think like Michelin Man, Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, where we see those 3D shapes, but they are layered on top of each other, okay? All right, so I've got, I think, a nice composition. My eye is moving all around. I don't have one giant thing in the middle. My donuts are all relatively similar in size because you wouldn't want some ridiculous like pizza-sized, donut and then to have like a smaller one squished over here. So that is important to make them look realistic. One thing we didn't talk about yet is donut holes. Say you have like a weird spot or maybe a couple of holes that you're like, oh, I'd really like to fill that. Why not add kind of like a freehand donut hole? I don't know if I like it on mine because I think I've used my space, but make sure it's not the only donut hole. If you're going to do a couple like, donut holes to fill some space with like maybe some like crumbs or something, then find a couple other places to add them. I would say you'd need at least 3 donut holes if you wanted to add some donut holes, okay? Again, they're not going to look like much until we color them, and that's okay because a donut hole is literally just a round-ish shape with sometimes it has sprinkles, sometimes it has sugar, all that good stuff. All right, so now I need to decide like what kind of donuts are where and what's got bites taken out of, what kind of details am I adding to my donuts. Okay, I think for my stack of donuts, I'm gonna leave them hole, but I am going to give them frosting. So I'm going to make sure the top one has its hole. But I'm going to go ahead and drip some frosting. And it won't all the way show because I'm working all the way up in that corner of the paper. But I'm going to go ahead and I have to do that down here as well, right? So I've got to make sure that my dough still shows. And try to make your frosting all a little bit different. Like I almost put that same curve in the same spot up here, and I want to make it a little bit different so that they look, you know, man-made, a little bit more natural. Make the curves a little different, right? All right, so then I did the same thing on the bottom. So now it looks a little bit more like 3 donuts stacked. And I am going to go and kind of clean up my curve a little bit. So as you go and add details, that's a great time to kind of like touch things up and say like, oh, I think that donut needs to be a little skinnier or whatever it may be. Okay. Let's see. I think for down here, I'm feeling a jelly donut or a custard filled donut. And I liked the idea of it spilling out on the table. So I am going to go ahead and draw the frosting in first and kind of pencil that in. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and use those soft parentheses, remember, soft curves. Erase out that middle. And then I only need to draw kind of the rough top edge because we're going to spill out that custard onto the table. And again, we'll do the rest with oil pastels and color because there'd be a little bit of line here for the chocolate frosting, and then this would be more of that white, and this would be more of that light brown. So that three-dimensional quality will come a little bit more to life when we add in our color. All right, so I've got some details, so I'm starting to really move across my list here of our 5 donuts. 2 holes, whole donuts, meaning not donut holes, but actual full-size donuts that fit on your paper. 3 decorated donuts. I have some with decoration, but we're not quite there yet. I don't have any swirls or sprinkles or anything like that. And then I've needed to break the edge of my paper. So I've checked most of my boxes on my list. But I'm going to go ahead with making my other donuts and deciding which ones will have holes, which ones are going to get more decorated. So for this sideways one, you got to make sure that your curve is still parallel, right? To the curve of the donut to make it look like it's resting. And then we will use some shading later to make it a little bit darker under these areas where that donut would rest on that side. Okay, and then I think I'm only going to have the one custard filled or jelly filled because I feel like if I made this a jelly filled, it would kind of be weird that all the jelly filleds were at the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and make this one a standard donut too. Clean up my curve a little bit. All right, I think I'm going to use the balance of the icing over here and bring it back down here so that they are similar donuts, or if not the same kind. And then remember, for this donut, since it's almost full, I do need to kind of draw in that icing on the back side edge. And I try not to make my wavy line a perfect wavy line, because again, it's just not going to look as realistic. So I'm going to go back and adjust this one a little bit so it's a little different. Again, you just don't want it to look too perfect. Then it just won't look real. Okay, for this one, to make it a little different from this, but still to kind of bring the design together, I think this is the one I would choose to do some sprinkles on. So again, sprinkles need to be full shapes and not just lines. They should fall in multiple angles and directions. You can have one like on the edge so that it like changes the dimension a little bit of the donut. And make sure that they are all relatively the same size. They could be a little bit more perfect than mine are. Mine are a little bit more oval shaped. Typically sprinkles are like kind of like that stick-like shape. That's up to you, whatever you're feeling. All right. But I'm going to go ahead and take, I think, bites out of these two donuts and maybe even add some crumbs. So I'm going to go ahead and maybe there's even like a large bite. Maybe I go ahead and pretend like a big chunk has been taken out of this one. Because we haven't really talked about that. Like sometimes, you know, you show up and like somebody's already been in the donut box and they like took like 2/3 of a donut and you're like, why didn't you just take the whole donut? So I'm going to go ahead and take a bigger chunk out of this one. So we're going to erase this whole section over here. And this whole section here. Show you something a little different. So then we actually need to draw the interior of our donut a little bit more. And it wouldn't be perfect, so be careful and kind of come back with like a little bit of like a rougher edge. And remember, color will go a long way too, because the exterior of our donut from the cooking is going to be darker than the interior. So then, yeah, you might want to do some like crumb-like pieces. Something like that. All right, nice little change of pace. So then for this one, maybe I will just take like a singular bite out of, just to change it up a little bit. And so not going all the way through the donut. But making sure it curves upward to make it look like a physical bite. Kind of along the lines of that. Oop, bring this in the camera a little bit. Sorry, guys. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm getting donuts for my family this week. And again, you could go ahead and add some crumbs if you wanted to. So again, your paper is the table. The paper is where the donuts are resting, and then you are doing everything else. Once you get all of your donuts sort of decorated and your bites are taken out, then you can decide like, all right, am I missing anything? I'm sort of feeling like I need to do like the bottom edge of a donut or something. So I'm going to leave this here in pencil, and then we'll see. I don't know how I feel about it, but I sort of felt like it was just a touch empty at the top. All right, so I cannot wait to see your donut designs. Don't forget to check in with me. I love to give you guys feedback, and have a good day.